CNN political commentator Bakari and Republican strategist Joseph Pinion. Thank you, gentlemen. You just heard Harry Enton with shock and surprise on his face as he was looking at the numbers. And I want to go to you first, Bakari. What explains this? Biden, 70%, Trump in 2024, 21% of voters, a very high number. And then when you look at 50 and under, the numbers are dramatically different for any Democratic president that we have ever seen. These numbers very high for a Republican candidate. What explains that, you think?
Poor polling. I mean, if you want to be honest about it, if Donald Trump gets those numbers, then I truly believe that I can sell Harry this bridge in Brooklyn. I mean, that's just not happening. I think that people have to just level set a little bit, relax a little bit, stop hyperventilating. Donald Trump is not going to get 20% of the black vote. He's simply not. Black voters traditionally, as we go throughout this process, as you get to Labor Day, et cetera, a lot of black voters do come home to the Democratic Party. There are warning lights. I've said it from the past 3 or 4 months about turnout. But I think that Harry and everyone else who are looking at these polls analyze this race incorrectly all the time. And the reason they analyze this race incorrectly is because Donald Trump isn't the biggest threat to Joe Biden. The biggest threat to Joe Biden is black voters staying at home. Black voters aren't going to all of a sudden under the age of 50 or however old they are because he gets, 4 or 5 unnamed rappers from Detroit or 4 or 5 unnamed rappers from the Bronx to support him. They're not going to all of a sudden, flock to Donald Trump. There is a threat, however, that black voters simply will stay at home because they feel sometimes like those policies passed in Washington, D.C. haven't necessarily touched their pockets. So I don't have the same shock and awe. I just think here we are in the middle of summer and things will stabilize and get back to norms as they always do.
But the numbers are the numbers, Bakari. I mean, are you saying just don't believe the polls, or are you saying you don't think these polls will be representative of the population once voting begins in November?
Oh, both. I think that traditionally, what we've seen over the past 8 years is pretty bad polling. And then I think what you've seen consistently since that time is individuals have a very difficult time acknowledging that we've had bad polling, and then the polling continuously gets worse. And so I think that's one of the issues that we have. But I mean, the Biden campaign they do have issues with African-American voters in terms of getting them to turn out to vote. That is a fact. That I was with Kamala Harris last week in Charlotte, North Carolina, and one of the things she was trying to do was ensure that she got black voters to the polls, particularly younger black voters. So they are working towards that. But Donald Trump's not getting 20% of the black vote. I can sit here and say that as a fact today.
I know you have a different opinion, Joseph Pinion, as your head is madly shaking. What are your thoughts on these numbers? And you've got Bakari and Joe Biden himself has sort of said he doesn't believe the polls, although it was on the economy. Does Donald Trump get 20% of the vote?
Look, I actually find myself agreeing a lot with some of the assessments by my friend Bakari. Look, I think Democrats are in many ways trying to either poo-poo the numbers or they're trying to scare people into changing the numbers. The reality is a Republican Party that gets 20% of the black vote is a Republican Party that stops losing elections. And the notion that Democrats would no longer enjoy monolithic support from the black community is something that terrifies Democrats up and down the ballot. So, yes, I understand why they are trying to push back against the narrative, but it comes at their own peril because for decades, my entire life, they have told us every 4 years we're not allowed to talk about the fact that black schools are failing black families, that we have a 3-strand cord of despair from that failure in those schools that in many ways is driving the poverty, which leads to the criminal element. There is no Biden plan to make American communities more safe. There is no Biden plan to give broader access to school choice. These are issues that black families are tired of having placed on the back burner. And so whether it's Joe Biden spending $25 million to try to push a Bidenomics ad buy that ended up with them getting rid of the term Bidenomics, or him now trying to make this push on character, saying that I am the character candidate and President Trump is not, black people, I think, writ large, are beginning to wake up to the reality that we cannot continue to engage in politics the same way. That does not mean that they're going to all of a sudden, like lemmings, start voting for Republicans, but it does mean that there are a larger number of black voters who are willing to hold their vote into Bakari's count count. Maybe they're not voting for Joe Biden, but they might not be willing to come out in the rain or on any day to continue to support a party that places their needs at the back burner.
I want to ask you how you think black voters get over some of the things that Donald Trump has said over the years, which are just they're racist. Let me go to some of the things that he said over the years.
The mugshot, we've all seen the mugshot. And you know who embraced it more than anybody else? The black population. It's incredible. And a lot of people said that that's why the black people like me, because they have been hurt so badly and discriminated against. And they actually viewed me as I'm being discriminated against. African Americans are getting slaughtered. Hispanic Americans are getting slaughtered. And these millions and millions of people that are coming into our country, it makes me sad because I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark, but I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person in this room.
He said a lot of different things that really were upsetting to black folks and white folks, frankly. How do you get over that? How does someone get over that?
I'll just say this. We're not in an election where you're saying this is the person who's perfect on race versus this is the person who's terrible on race. I think that we like to whitewash away the racial gaffes of the candidates when we believe in the underlying policies of that candidate. So whether it's Joe Biden talking about racial jungles 30 years ago and Kamala Harris having to remind people that that little girl on that bus you didn't want us on was me, or whether it's Joe Biden as recent as 2 years ago reminiscing about the good times we used to hang out in the cafeteria with all of those avowed racists in the United States Senate. Yes, there are plenty of comments that we can talk about from these presidents. There are people on the left who I think will probably take more issue with the racial legacy of Donald Trump. But most people, I think, are saying it is a pox on both houses. If you are someone who subscribes to the notion that racism is the original sin of this country, it is certainly not confined to either side of the political aisle. And that type of, I think, myopic approach to dealing with race is why we have had such a difficult time fixing the issue of race. And I think it's why you see people now, in spite of all the things Democrats are talking about, continuing to go back to that 2016 playbook about the Central Park Five. It is not working. The numbers are eroding before our very eyes, and Democrats can ignore them at their own peril.
Bakari, what are your thoughts on how he is seen by the black community after the comments he makes?
Listen, I just listened to my good friend not actually answer your question, and I thought that the dodging was pretty cool. I thought it was good. I thought your elocution was amazing. Look, the fact is Donald Trump uses racism as political currency. To his point, this is baked into the cake of who Donald Trump is. I mean, we know Donald Trump is racist. So anytime you sit here and say, look, that guy over there is racist, don't vote for him, that's really not moving the needle. And so you're right when you talk about pointing out the facts and the words that Donald Trump uses and how he gets rid of, all of the diversity departments and civil rights departments and all the federal administrative departments when he was president of the United States. When you think about these things and you tie in the language that he uses, the fact is Donald Trump is not trying to woo black voters to the Republican Party. That's not what this is about. When you see him go to black churches or when you have Kwame Kilpatrick become a shell of himself and go out and endorse Donald Trump, that is not to show the world that black voters are voting for Donald Trump. What he is trying to do, though, is make himself more palatable to those college-educated white voters, to those independent voters, to those voters in the suburbs. That is what this play is about. This play is about moving that needle in the middle and saying, look, I'm having this group come to me or come back to me. I'm able to do events in black churches, quote unquote, black churches. And so you need to give me a second look. You need to see that this campaign is different than the past and I'm more of an all-around candidate. And so I think that's what this is about, more so than a true play to get black voters all of a sudden to find a new home in the Republican Party.
That is a really interesting argument, Bakari. I will have to congratulate both of you for being so gentlemanly to one another in these difficult political times where we are always at each other's throats. So thank you both for coming on this. Maybe it's because it's Monday. I feel like on Friday this might be a little bit different. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. All right. And of course, in just 10 days, we're probably going to see some fiery comments. CNN hosting the first presidential debate between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump this morning.